So we got the end of September. Actually, we just passed midnight here in Sweden, so it's actually October here now. I'm talking to Daniel Negreanu. Daniel, how are you?
Hello, sir. I'm in my favorite place in the world. You can see the pillows. I'm on my couch, which is my man cave, and in my workout stuff because I just came from the gym and just relaxing, enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. You're growing a good beard. You're comfortable with that beard?
Actually, this is shorter than it's been. I
I
mean, during the
know.
summer, I had a big, thick one. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
had this size beard I've had for quite a while.
yeah, 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 yeah. And you're gonna keep on growing that?
No, I'm thinking about going a little thinner. Just I like to mix it up.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a fun one on poker. What was the poker show? The Super Bowl, Super High Roller Bowl. I had one that was thin here, longer here, and pointy like this, like Jonas Valanciunas, who plays for the Raptors. It was cool. I don't know. I had fun with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah. But you're good. You're good.
Very good. Yeah, I just came back from New York last night. I was in Toronto for a week playing W Coop, and I went to New York for Vanessa Selbst charity event.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
called Blinds Justice, and I supported her there this year and last year.
Tell me about what's that supporting?
Okay, so Blinds and Justice, and this is important. Like, I don't just support charities randomly. It matters to me. I want to know what this is, right?
Yeah,
And Blinds and Justice is not a charity that gets a lot of attention. And what they do is this: it's clear that in the United States, if you're wealthy versus you don't have any money, and you're charged with the exact same crime or anything like that, the fact that you're wealthy gives you an infinitely better chance of not paying any or not going to jail or anything like that, right? Whereas if you don't have the money to hire the right lawyers, you may be completely innocent of something but spend time in jail if you can't afford the fines and things like that.
yeah,
So you often get a public defender, right? The problem with these public defenders, and they do the best they can, is they get so many cases a day. They get about 7 minutes to look at a case. 7 minutes. Now, if I'm a lawyer in 7 minutes, what do you think I'm going to tell them to do? Just plead guilty,
yeah,
because it's like, I can't fix this. So what ends up happening is a lot of these people who, let's say, get a $1,000 fine or that can't afford it, they end up having to spend 3 to 5 days in jail. And there's much worse cases. So what Blinds and Justice does is it helps to level the playing field a little bit for some people that have cases against them where, a lot of the time are innocent, or sometimes maybe they're not, but need representation. And so
mm. Wow,
they
interesting.
raise money for those types of people because they're definitely, anyone who is being honest here, like, can look at the landscape and the criminal justice system, and it's, you get charged with something, you're innocent, but it could ruin your life
Yeah,
because you pay all these fees and legal fees in order to, clear your name, and it's not fair.
but I mean, if you would ask most people who is accused of anything, most of them will say, "Well, I'm not guilty." You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody in jail is innocent. It's amazing.
So how are you going to sort out the ones that deserves the help and the justice that are not guilty compared to the ones that tells they are but they are not?
Well, listen, I don't know the details in terms of how they, usher in the ones that, are not guilty or guilty. But the point is, whether people are guilty or not, they have the right to representation, like, even if they are guilty. And the representation you get as a wealthy person versus if you're, not wealthy varies so greatly
Mm.
that they're basically just kind of, it's an afterthought.
Yeah, yeah.
People don't have money. There was a documentary called Making a Murderer about a guy who was very
I know.
poor.
Yeah, yeah. That was quite huge. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he said something to the effect of, like, this country, if you're poor, you're screwed.
yeah.
You're screwed if you're poor. Or if you got money, like, look at O.J. Simpson, for
I
example.
was about to bring that up. I mean, that's maybe the most obvious example.
Yeah, you compare O.J. Simpson to this poor guy, the Making a Murderer guy, who was accused of things, and in the first case, for certain, he didn't do it, but had to spend all the 18 years in jail. Where O.J. Simpson, he's only in jail recently for something totally unrelated, but got away with what most would call murder.
He got away with murder. That's
Yeah.
that's very clear. Yeah, and that was because there was lawyers there that saw the opportunity to make money and get some fame and all that.
Well, he had the money to pay a legal team
Yeah,
that was strong enough and good enough. And the truth is, in this country, the whole system's messed up. Like,
yeah, yeah.
you get sued
But
for something. Like, if I got sued for something, right?
yeah,
Now, whether I'm innocent or not, like, if I fight it, I am going to lose money on this.
yeah,
Because, what the way this law should be, and I know this is true in other countries, is if I sue you, right, and you have to hire a lawyer and pay all these legal fees or whatever, and then you win the case, I should have to pay your legal fees.
Of course.
Right? But no, that's not the way it works. So if I want to ruin you here in this country, right, I can sue you for something and charge you with something you never did, make you spend $20,000, $30,000 in lawyer fees and legal fees, and maybe you know what happens, which is the case with, which probably a segue, with Donald Trump and what he's done with so many of the people that he works with, or that he's worked with and that he's stiffed and screwed, like workers and stuff. What he'll do is he'll hire, a team of people to come, do his banquet hall and all this, and then at the end he's like, you know what? I'm not going to pay you guys what I said I'm going to pay you. Fuck you. I'm going to give you 1/3 of it, maybe. You know what? I'm not even going to pay you at all. And those people are like, that's illegal. You can't do that. And he's like, well, sue me. He's used to that. He's in the litigation. He has lawyers, and he basically explains to them. And his lawyers will tell those people, it's like, listen, you have two choices. You can get buried in legal fees, right? Or you can take the 1/3 that we're offering.
Yeah.
Right. So it's manipulation based on the fact that you have the resources and the money, and it's taking advantage of people. And that's a problem with the legal system, the criminal justice system as a whole in this country. And it's just too easy to exploit if you're wealthy.
It's such a big topic. I mean, it's such a big problem in America, I think, all that bit. And it's very hard for someone who comes from abroad to try to understand that. But even for Americans, I mean, do you look at yourself as an American?
I'm Canadian with Romanian roots that happens to live in America now, and I'm going to be voting in the election. So, I mean, officially I am, but I still, obviously, I think most people think back to their roots and identify that way. So, I mean, depending where, I identify as Romanian.
Yeah.
I also identify as Canadian, and less so American just because it's so fresh and new.
But you said one of the things you said that got a lot of attention was that I'm going to apply for American citizenship so that I can vote against Trump. Yeah,
I've been here for 20 years now.
I know.
And I know that I'm going to stay. So part of me is like, you know what? Let's make the commitment and stay. And also, you can talk all you want about wanting to make change or wanting to vote, but if you don't actually do it, then your vote doesn't count. So I really wanted my vote to count. And what's really funny is how many people on Twitter would say, well, are you even American? You shouldn't have an opinion on politics because you're stupid if you're not American. I'm like, actually, studies show the opposite of that is likely true. But point being is, somehow now that I'm American, my opinion matters, or that, it makes sense. But before, no, because I'm Canadian. Not that that's why I did it, but just interesting to me how just naive people can be, as though somebody from England couldn't study, U.S. politics and have a better understanding than your average American.
Yeah, that was I was about to say that. I mean, most of the people that say that might not have a great view on how the political landscape is and what's fair and so on. I mean, it's a very hot topic right now, of course, and there's a lot of people in the poker industry apparently that kind of vote for Trump, and that's kind of amazed me because most people who play poker are intelligent people. Can you explain that?
It's funny because Eric Seidel, who's obviously not supporting Trump, he sent out a tweet saying, if you want a good poker game, look for a table full of Trump supporters. Because if you look at the super high rollers, the best players in the world, you don't find Trump supporters, right? Typically in the lower tier, they're typically lower end, and whether you equate that to intelligence or not is up to you. It just happens to be a fact. We have a couple. We really don't have many vocal Trump supporters. For example, Doyle Brunson, he'll be voting for Trump simply because he hates Hillary more, right? Mm-hmm. So he has a view, and he has support for justice things. Like, he does not like Trump. Okay, he doesn't think, yay, Trump is my guy. He just has this, he's been brainwashed by Fox News quite clearly, and has this, demonic view of Hillary as though she's going to end the world, despite the fact that we already had 8 years of the Clintons. And excuse me, that's a phone call I need to hang up on. Despite the fact we've already had 8 years of the Clintons, and we did okay, But anyway, so with Doyle, I can actually have conversations with him. I like Doyle. I find him to be respectful for the most part. But then you have really the loudest mouth, which is the most uneducated, most dishonest, lack of integrity human being that exists in poker, and that's Mike Matusow. He just recently got into politics, so he gets his information from Breitbart, Fox News, and he says such hateful, racist, xenophobic things that he doesn't even sexist as well that he's just not even aware of. But he's become such a disgusting, angry old white dude that. He's not a friend of mine. Like, I could never consider. I mean, we were friends in the past, but that's never going to happen again. Aside from that, I know personally of some things he's done specifically that are completely theft, scamming, disgusting, and he's likely going to have to pay, in court for some of these things that he's done. So I have zero respect for that guy. Like, not because he's voting for Trump. I know some other people that are too. It's because of the viciously hateful, oblivious things that he says publicly that you just can't take back. And like, for one example, right? Just to give you one example of a tweet that he sent out. A grandfather raped the 2-year-old granddaughter. Okay.
Oh, wow.
The mother, out of shame for the granddaughter, killed the son. Right? They happen to be Muslim, and it was in a Muslim community. So Mike wrote a tweet that says, "All you never Trump people, this is what's coming if Hillary gets in."
Wow.
But
are you serious?
Yeah, like, not understanding how horrifyingly offensive that is to, Muslims or just to anyone in general, to sort of make the equation as though you haven't heard stories of like a mother in Alabama, killing her child in a pool or anything like that. Like, crazy shit happens, but to label an entire religion or an entire sect of people based on one story that you read online is so highly offensive and so part of the problem, because that alienates. When Trump says things like, he wants to put a ban on all Muslims traveling here, that story plays very well into exactly what terrorists and ISIS want to have happen.
Yeah.
They want to reach out to the disenfranchised people in America who feel isolated or whatever the case may be and say, you know what? They want you out of the country anyway. So this only plays into the narrative that ISIS as a recruiting group uses in order to, get more Americans to do dumb, crazy things. And, spouting that kind of racist and xenophobic stuff is just really reckless and inappropriate. And he's past the point of no return. He's like completely far gone.
I mean, is there? We've been talking about him before, and I know I asked you about him, and he's been kind of a character and so on. But it seems like it turned in a way over the past year or two in this way. What made that difference, do you think?
Well, partly he fits the demographic, right? He's uneducated, he's older, he's white. He has no empathy. This is another area. Like, he has no empathy for what it's like to actually be black. Not that I understand what it's like to be black and walk the streets, but he makes claims on behalf of black people that he couldn't possibly relate to. Him saying it's not an issue for black people is so offensive because he isn't black. So when Colin Kaepernick of San Francisco or whoever says that they walk down the street and they're profiled by police or whatever, whether it's true or not, that perception that they have is something we need to empathize with. He shows none whatsoever. He just calls them that they're not real problems, right? So he's always been really dumb when it comes. He's like literally been a really dumb guy.
Yeah.
Like, real stupid. Like, he's on the wrong side of most issues for most of his life. He's got a big mouth and he spews what he has to say. The problem is this is too serious a topic. We're talking about a national security risk, not just for America, but the entire world. Like a Trump presidency, a guy who says 3 times in a day, why can't we use the nuclear weapons again? Like, what? Like, because they'll destroy the entire earth? Like, it's kind of a big deal. His lack of understanding, lack of knowledge is really dangerous. And a lot of generals, there was 50 of them that were Republican-based, that signed a letter saying that this man is very dangerous to national security. And many intelligent people within government and outside of government have alluded to that. So to spew this kind of dangerous stuff, now it's more than just Mike saying dumb stuff about the Hall of Fame, which is fine. He can say what he'd like. This is serious. This is a serious issue. And him promoting, just a buffoon, a complete con artist. And now listen, I'm not saying Hillary Clinton is the ideal candidate, but one thing's for sure. She has a better understanding of national security. She understands the issues better. That's not debatable on any front. She's been in office. She's been doing things for 30, 40 years. And as much as you may have trust issues or these things with the email and whatnot, when you put the two in front of each other, one is clearly a lot more qualified and is going to do just fine working with both sides. With Trump, we have no idea what's going to happen with him. I mean, he said not too long ago that in Iran, that in the seas, that they were making gestures at Americans, like some sort of gestures. He says, if they do that on when I'm president, We're going to blow them out of the water. Okay? So he wants to start a war. So you put up your finger like this, and he's literally saying, I will start a war over that. He's talked about going after the families of terrorists, which is an international war crime. He's talked about waterboarding and bringing back torture. There's such a laundry list of dangerous things this man has said that Trump supporters who actually do support him fully are completely, they don't give a shit what he does. He could shit in a baby's mouth and shoot 4 of them, and they'd be like, yeah, but they were probably going to be terrorists when they grew up. Like, there's just no logic. There's no point in reaching out, and I don't spend any time discussing things with Trump supporters. Last thing, I've always loved talking politics with Republicans and people of different views. With Trump supporters, there's no point. There's just no point because there's not enough rationale or intelligence typically to have a rational discussion. So, because I have a lot of Republican friends who hate Trump, but I love talking policy with them. That's not what this election's about. This is about morally disgusting behavior and a bad representation for our children. He acts like a 5-year-old. If I had a kid who acted like him, I would scold him. Right? And this is a grown man who's calling people names and Miss Piggy and Mrs. Housekeeping and Crooked Hillary and Lion Ted and Little Marco. Like, what are you, a fucking child? Seriously.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible. I mean, just 2 days ago, there was, the first real debate in a while between the two of them. Some people said that the guy who held made the questions were kind of voting for Hillary. Would you agree with that?
So that's funny, and I knew that would happen already. So basically,
of course,
if you lose, blame the moderator, right?
Yeah, but could you see any of that? Could you see any point of that?
So here's what happened. If you look at the stats, Trump interrupted her. I think it was 37 or 57 times. She interrupted him 17. Right. Yeah. So during her 2 minutes, he was continuously interrupting. He was not answering questions. He was going off topic. So Lester Holt was trying to bring some decorum and keep things on schedule. Do I believe in any sense that he was shaping questions that would like sabotage Trump? No. You know who sabotaged Trump? Trump did. Yeah. He wasn't prepared. Him and Roger Ailes, who was accused of sexual assault, the runner of Fox News. They were trying to do mock debates or whatever, but they ended up, according to insiders, just having conversations about stories, and they didn't really do any work. So you saw in the second half of the debate, and I tweeted this before, I said, watch the second half. She came in well prepared to answer all the questions, and she had a plan. He didn't, and he started to lose his cool by the second half. She really did a great job early on of mocking him somewhat for the fact that his money came from his daddy. And that's going to piss a guy like him off because he has a few trigger points. One is his wealth, right? Because he's not as wealthy as he says he is. She started to touch on the taxes, like, well, why isn't he releasing his taxes? Either A, he's not paying for charity. B, he doesn't have as much money, he says. C, he hasn't paid any taxes, or there's some big things he's hiding, like fraudulently with his foundation, which, there's evidence that that's true. So she did a really good job of getting him off kilter. And, overall, what was funny is post-debate, online polls were like, he won them all, right? Yeah. So there was a thread in Reddit by this group called 4chan, which is a white nationalist, racist, alt-right type group who basically they've done this before. They said, let's flood the online polls by, repeat voting and doing these sorts of things. So none of the actual scientific polls show that he won. And unless you're like blind, or oblivious, even I know Trump supporters said, okay, well, he lost. But this idiot Trump is actually now mad at his surrogates for saying that, he could have done better or that he didn't win. He's telling them not to say that anymore because he's trying to claim that, that he won. And Sean Hannity, who's always on his biggest freaking idiot ever, they're citing these online polls. And Fox News actually said to them, they released a statement saying, yeah, these polls are not, they're not worthy of our attention. So anyway. Yeah.
It is a super interesting topic, and being an outsider, I mean European, I mean I've been talking and discussing this a lot for us to try to understand how he can become how he can be their first choice. I mean, it's hard for us to understand over here on the other side of the pond.
I think it's hard for most people, and it's really sad. And my biggest fear would be if somehow he were to win, the rest of the world looks at America in a different light, right? And I know
Yeah.
that there are really a lot of good people in here, but we also have a lot of people that are simply uneducated and, that are quote unquote angry and are falling for an authoritarian, a guy who is a demagogue, who, is loud and abrasive, and they foolishly see as some sort of leader, and they buy his bullshit. And frankly, the media has done a really poor job of creating this to some degree, because they've given him so much free exposure, like billions of dollars worth of free advertising, that he hasn't even spent the money on his own campaign, right? Because he's basically been in the news consistently for the last year, and every time he does something, they're covering it, no matter how foolish it is. The other thing I wanted to point on with that is, and I've had this discussion with people for like a year ago about political correctness. Part of what's happening here is this is the last stand for the older generation, putting their foot down against the young millennials, if you will, who are overly politically correct, where they're very so a lot of older people are just so disgusted by it, because what's happening is the younger generation isn't doing a good enough job of the olive branch of saying, here, we understand where you came from, but here's how we'd like to treat people. Here's how we'd like to say things and rephrase things. Let's call people undocumented immigrant rather than illegal alien. But, instead what they're chastising those people. So those people are lashing out at that. So to some degree, I think that push too far to the left too quickly in the way that it's being done sort of created this. And Trump is a symptom of the divisiveness in this country, with the movement of the left, the extreme liberals, the SJWs, if you will, social justice warriors, coming from a place of they're just too aggressively implementing what they believe to be right, and not coming from compassion and understanding that a 60-year-old man has lived his whole life calling people gay or whatever he wants to use. And, now you're saying that's not okay, but don't villainize this guy. Yeah. Come from compassion and understand, okay, well, he doesn't understand why. And they've done a really poor job on college campuses and, in that area. I think overall that's created a problem to some degree.
Well, what's interesting is the media in America is a lot of people say that it's run by people who would be Republicans. Is that a fact? I mean, we have Fox News who understand that that's very right wing, but I mean, is the majority of the media, is it right or left in America?
It's clear. It's very clear, and it's very clear that the vast majority of the media leans left. MSNBC is way far to the left, for example. CNN leans left. Fox News is way to the right, but because the truth is, most of the country leans left, right? And most of the media definitely does lean left. Anytime you're talking about big cities like Philadelphia, New York, California, big states or big cities where there's lots of people, cosmopolitan, they typically lean left. They're much more liberal. Yeah. You see a lot more conservatives in rural areas where, small towns where there's less people. For example, Nevada. Las Vegas is left. We're liberal here, right? But Nevada as a whole, there's a lot of areas of Nevada, like Pahrump and different places, that are isolated from the rest of the world. Typically where people get together, people of all different colors, races, and creeds get together, they're likely to be more compassionate, not compassionate, maybe that's not the right word, more liberal and more tolerant. Maybe not tolerant is like the right word. More understanding of
open-minded?
Huh?
Open-minded, maybe?
Yeah, I would say that's maybe more accurate. Open-minded to different, issues, especially on social issues like gay rights, racist issues.
And people who asks questions. I think that's a very important point. People who are interested in finding out about new stuff. And that's not a fact for everyone, right?
Yeah, I just think people being more up to date on what's happening in the world. Yeah. And, there are certain people that are stuck in their ways, and it's typically more a case of the older generation being like that. They have a view of the way things are, and it's very difficult to take a 70-year-old man and change the way he views things. That's why with Doyle, who's 84 now, I don't profess to try to explain to Doyle that he's gonna. I don't expect him to change his views on everything. No. And it's funny. I talk to Doyle a lot about this kind of stuff, and so he has this view, which I think is kind of funny. He believes the end times are coming. He's a Christian. He believes that the end of the world is coming. So part of why he's voting for Trump is well, the nukes are going to fly. He believes that's happening. So it's might as well be Trump thing. I'm yeah, but if you're a Christian, aren't you called to stand for somebody that represents your values and not are we supposed to like help make it happen, the rapture, if you will? So anyway, I don't label Doyle negatively in any way, because I understand he's 84 and his upbringing has shaped his views on the world. And the younger generation that live in cosmopolitan areas specifically, their views of the world are very, very different, right?
Yeah,
the issue is when they attack someone like Doyle for, having views that maybe are sexist or potentially racist or something along those lines, and unknowingly, and labeling him as evil or a bad person, because he's not any of those things. He just simply has very different views on what's right and wrong.
Yeah, but what's different to Doyle and most other 84-year-olds is that most 84-year-olds doesn't tweet that much, and he's still a person that people look up to and listen to, and if they follow him and so on. Have you ever tried to convince him to try to be more liberal at all on his things that he puts out there?
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say liberal for sure. I've definitely talked to him about the thing with him, and I actually joked with him. And he says, "Come on, it's one of my last." I said, "Doyle, you need to get off of TV because he's getting too much information from cable news, typically Fox News." And I said, "You need to get off it. It's all trash TV. Whether it's CNN, MSNBC, it's all trash TV. It's not a good place to digest your political information." And he says, "Can't you leave an old man to have one entertainment some way?" I'm like, "Okay, go ahead."
Okay.
Why? But like, be more mindful of because he was tweeting out that Trump won all the polls. Like, yeah, but Doyle, I actually showed him the link. I said, "Doyle, but they were rigged. The polls." He's like, "Oh, come on. If they were rigged, Hillary's people would have done it." I was like, "No, here's evidence. They really did rig all those stupid online polls. And you watched the debate and he didn't win."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting. It's a lot of politics, and it's going to be for another month and a half at least, and it's going to be a very, very hot topic. Do you think what would you say the percentage right now is? An honest guess on percentage, 50-50, Hillary, Donald?
So it's fluctuated a lot. There was a time a few weeks ago, or after the Democratic National Convention, where the con stories came out and Trump looked like he was done, and Hillary was up to like 85-90%.
Yeah.
Since then, he's got a new campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, who's kind of reined him in a little bit, so he was a little less crazy for a few weeks, and that really saw him shoot up to basically almost even, where Hillary was probably 55-45. Now what we're seeing since the debates, I think here's the key, right? People that are going to vote for Trump are voting for Trump. People that are not voting for him are voting for Hillary or whatever. So all that's left are independents, right? Or some Gary Johnson voters who, if they want to make their vote actually count against Trump, will have to switch. But if you look at how independents are receiving him after the debate, CNN had 20 independents and 18 of them said Trump won. There were other controlled environments where they had independents watch. And I can't think of any independents that watch that debate and go, "Yeah, that Trump, he seems real rational and calm and relaxed and has good temperament," right? But on the other hand, Hillary did show up, prepared, well organized, kept her cool, and handled his barrages quite well. So really, they're the focus. I would want to make and also there's been a recent push by Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to reach out to young millennials. And I want to say to any millennials that might be listening that are voting, I understand you don't like Hillary. I understand you don't like Trump. I get it. I totally get it, right? But this is too dangerous. This election is specifically too dangerous to throw what I would call like kind of a temper tantrum vote, because as much as you like Gary Johnson or whatever, he's not going to win.